Carol and Tuesday Part 2 will be coming to Netflix on Christmas Eve 2019. I hate Netflix so fucking much. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Atcast, a podcast for the study of modern visual culture. I'm your host, my name's Soup, here to talk about Parasite. Did you know that this tune is about land disputes?
What was that? And I'm Renu, I guess.
So, if you don't know, this week AT stands for Allegorical Tailspin because we'll be talking about Bong Joon-ho's Parasite. But before we get into that, I will explain myself.
Okay, please.
So the thing I just did is the thing that the sister character in Parasite does, where she's like, Jessica, we don't da 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 da.
Oh yeah.
Right? And the tune that she sings that to is like a mnemonic device that people use in Korea, where they like use the melody of this song to like memorize information. Now, the fun part about that is that this song is actually about land disputes. It's about a like Dokdo Island, which is an island off the coast of Korea that basically Japan took in the war and was like, this is ours now, you know, when they did the colonialism. And so they took it and was like, this is ours now. You made this, I made this. And it has been a hotly contested point of geography for a very long time. So basically, there's your fun fact of the day.
Wow. Thanks for that.
And, like, Korean anti-colonial threads go very, very deep. So there you go. That's a fun fact for you.
Great.
Anyway, before we actually talk about the movie,
Yeah.
what have we been up to? What have you been up to, Renu?
I think you and I have both been playing games recently, which is awesome. So
Correct.
I've been playing through Bravely Second, which I kind of bought on a whim.
Oh no.
Despite, like, I protested playing it because my favorite character from the first one isn't really in this one.
Yep. You mean objectively the best character?
Yeah. He's there in, like, the very beginning, but he doesn't even, like, he just goes away.
Yes, yeah, yep.
Wait, did you beat this game?
Okay, so no. I think I got about 60 levels into it before I just stopped playing and forgot to finish. I don't know how the game ends.
Yeah, I haven't. Everyone that I've talked to that has played this game has not finished it. And so now I'm like, all right, well,
yeah.
Now it's my solemn duty to see what the end is and if my favorite character comes back. I'm enjoying it because I liked the first game a lot. Like, the mechanics are still there. They've added things like the whole Bravely Second mechanic, which allows you to stop time and take extra turns at the cost of, like, this time-based refillable bar that's basically an excuse for Nintendo to have microtransactions in their game.
Yeah. But, like, because it's Nintendo... Hold on. I always find it really funny that because it's Nintendo, it's also implemented in the most clumsy, like, useless way possible.
It is. It's like
there's actually no incentive to spend money on the game because the mechanic itself is not, like, worth it enough to actually do money for.
Exactly.
Which I thought was kind of funny.
Yeah, Nintendo seems like they're trying to creep into the microtransaction market, but they don't know how to do so without being morally wrong against children. And so,
I mean, just look at their mobile games, which, to be fair, is, like, kind of in the same boat where, like, they're bad, like, because obviously microtransactions aimed towards children is, like, a morally not good place to be, because you're basically just like, okay, we're gonna try to trick these children into spending something that they don't realize is real. And
Right.
that sucks, but also it's hilarious because the games themselves are not like good enough to spend money on. Not
Right.
that like disincentivizes people from spending money, because God knows people will spend money on bad games.
Sure.
And kids can't tell the fucking difference. They're just like, it's Mario, I want Mario, so they'll roll the gacha for Mario or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, oh Nintendo.
It's weird, man.
It's very strange, yeah.
But yeah, I'm having fun with it so far. Like, I don't know about the story, you know?
So, yeah, I think that's a big part of why I didn't really finish it, is that I liked the characters enough-ish. I just don't think the story was very good.
Yeah, like so far, at least for me, it's not like the story is so like clumsy, it feels like. I really liked the whole sequence that they had at the end of the first game and that they put into the second game where Tiz is in the pod, and then you have the person revealed to be Magnolia is the one that saves him, and so you get to like point your camera around,
Mm-hmm.
and look at the sequence. It's cool. But it felt like it was so clumsily implemented, like in story-wise, it felt like something that they developed as like a teaser for the second game, but they didn't actually had concretely developed the circumstances around it.
Yeah,
And
I don't think they
so-
actually thought about it.
Yeah, and so like you just have this character who like she has a pretty like design or whatever, it's fine, and she's meant to be like very mysterious but very charming, kind of like almost like a femme fatale-esque character. But when she enters your party, she apparently crashed from the moon, and it is so sudden, like you just happen upon her, and she's like, yeah, I came from the moon, and then your character gives her a magnolia flower to like kind of rouse her from her sleep, and she's apparently so charmed by this that she ends up joining your party, and that's it. And it was in the span of like 5 minutes that you just meet this stranger and she joins your party, and you're apparently okay with this despite the fact that you're on a mission to save the Pope. And so then later on she like you're on your way to collect Tiz, who's the main character of the first game, and he is stuck in this pod, but the pod is in a tower that got taken over by the enemy. And so the enemy realizes that Tiz is starting to wake up, and so your characters are like, oh no, we gotta go and save him. And then Magnolia is like, I got this, and she just like disappears from the rest of the party on her own, like does this entire long sequence in the whole like camera AR reality whatever thing, where she takes down all these soldiers and all these bosses, this big boss, and saves Tiz by herself, and then the rest of the party shows up, and it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, it really doesn't. Nope, it doesn't, not even a little bit.
So yeah, there's a lot of moments like that in the game where it feels very clumsy, or it's just like, I don't know, I guess because it's written for like a much younger audience, that there's a lot of like really convenient moments of like, oh, we happen to overhear this thing, our party is like right over here, and it'll like pan over to where they're like eavesdropping right on the enemy, and the enemy doesn't see them. Or they'll have moments where like I don't know if you remember this moment where Tiz is like the enemy is like approaching them and clearly sees them, and they're on the lookout for intruders. And then Tiz does the whole like Star Wars reference where he's like, these are not the intruders you're looking for. And then the enemy is so dumb that they're like, I don't think those are the intruders we're looking for, and then they leave. So I'm like, okay, the story wasn't written for me.
No.
Which, I mean,
No.
like, in the first game, it didn't feel quite as, I don't know, maybe my memories of it are not very good, but it didn't feel quite like this. You know what I mean?
I think I would say that at least the early bits of the game are so disjointed, because I think that like the early parts of, and I think Bravely Default as a whole was like mostly pretty good. like it was a little bit disjointed from what I remember, but it was not nearly as disjointed as Bravely Second is.
Yeah.
And I think, to be fair, part of Bravely Default's charm was that it felt so much like, you know, kind of like a small scale Final Fantasy game where, you know, the towns aren't super big, there's not a ton of NPCs, and it just looks like, you know, a DS Final Fantasy game. You know, it's you kind of like remember what that was like, and then they have like, you know, a sort of the same, but there's a different mechanic to like spice things up, turn-based battle system, and it just felt like, I mean, really, it just felt like a Final Fantasy game, but like with all the numbers filed off, and not even all of them filed off. And, but that was a part of the charm of it, and I think that Bravely Second doesn't really carry that as well for various reasons. One of which is like whatever they decided to do with the story. Like I do think it gets better. Like I think it really sort of peaks in the middle, because I remember I was like, okay, like I'm having some fun with this now, and then I like at some point put it down and I never picked it back up, so maybe it wasn't that good. Who knows?
I feel like the first game was also, it kind of peaked somewhere in the middle, like before the whole
I completely
second part
agree.
happened.
And I will say, like, I think part of the charm of the first game was like, as annoying as it was, the looping mechanic where like you would just loop worlds over and over again, but every world was slightly different and you could see what different characters were up to, and that was like kind of charming. Like,
I did actually like that.
They actually had a lot of like really subtle characterization for a lot of characters that you wouldn't really think. Like the first like two villains that you defeat, like the like Jesse James like villains that you get like the monk and white mage classes for, and you know, in each consecutive world they get like a little bit closer, and you're like, that's kind of cute. And
it is.
That kind of stuff doesn't really happen in Bravely Second, because while it does have, oh god,
don't spoil me.
No, okay, here's the thing. I will try not to. I don't know how far you are into the game, but there is a.
I just defeated the. Let's see. I got the first two asterisk classes, and
okay.
I don't know. I got the fencer one as well. Okay, so I got the 4 asterisk classes.
Okay,
because I went against Jan and Nikolai.
I will tell you this, because I don't mind spoiling this, because I was so fucking mad when I learned about it, and I don't want you to have to suffer. There is a point. I feel like
you did this with me with this first game too. You spoiled me on the looping thing, and so I knew to brace myself.
Okay, well, I only wish to prepare you for the parts that I just think are a little bit like bullshit. Okay. There is a boss fight in Bravely Second against the who's the, like, I think you fight him in the very beginning of the game. Like, who's that dude? Like that really strong guy.
Oh, yeah. He's like the main bad guy so far. And he has the little fairy girl with him.
The only way that you break out of the loop, and they don't signal this at all, because, and okay, I'm so upset about this fucking thing, like, years later, because I think it's a really bad way of using. It's so bad. It's such a bad way to design your game, and you shouldn't do this. So basically, the main villain of Bravely Second has a fairy, like like the first game. Like the first game. I don't remember what her name was.
I don't either.
But because of that, he has this, like, he has the ability to essentially like cheese you. Like, you don't get to win that fight. But what they don't tell you is that the way you're supposed to win that fight, eventually, because you will just, like, you know, loop back around to it, the way you're supposed to win that fight is you're supposed to use the time stop mechanic, which is the dumbest shit ever.
So if you don't have your points you're saved up for that thing, like say you happen to use it before this fight, you would have to wait for it to replenish.
Well, I don't remember exactly how it is, or how it works, but I will say this, like, it's not a good way to design your game if you have a part of your game that is only like slightly diegetic, that's like only slightly integrated into your world, and is also like that mechanic is connected to something like financial and outside the bounds of the game.
That's scummy.
You cannot have that be a central mechanic of your game. Like I don't think it would like put you in a situation where you have to like wait or whatever, but if you don't know to do this, you will loop forever. I only realized this after looping an extra like 3 or 4 times.
Oh no.
Because they don't signal this to you in any way, and they just expect you to like you're like, oh, I guess I'll just use the cool time stop mechanic, which already feels like a cheese thing to do because it's like a mechanic that doesn't feel like it's supposed to be part of the game.
Right. I understand that that obviously, like, because it's called Bravely Second, like it's cool to have that be used against the boss in an essential way. The problem is that despite the fact that I've been playing this game for several hours now, or I have several hours of game time playtime into it, I've only used that mechanic once.
Oh,
and
I almost never use that fucking thing.
Yeah, but the thing is that you can't use it more than once unless you pay for it, because it charges so slowly. It charges according to in-game time. Like, it says that it charges when you're in sleep mode, and so I've been leaving my 3DS in sleep mode. But even then, it barely charges at all. Like, it's supposed to go up to like level like 3 or something like that, and still at level 1 for me.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So I don't know. It's crazy. Like, you have a mechanic that you can't use hardly at all, and you make that the main boss thing. I guess it's
that's the only. And I would understand if it was at the end of the game, but it's not. It's like in the middle. Like, it's not even entirely in the middle, I don't think. Like, it might be earlier than the middle part of the game.
Yeah, you honestly use it so little that you forget that it exists. So
I legit was like, I'm doing something wrong. I had to look it up, and then I was so mad. Anyway, don't make that mistake like I did. You can just skip doing the retries over and over and over and over again if you just click that button. And like, great. Oh, you know what it is? You don't even have to have points. It just stops time, and he's like, oh no! And then he leaves without kidnapping Agnes or whatever.
Oh.
Pretty sure that's, like, all you have to do is have had to stop time in the fight.
Okay.
Which is, it was so annoying when I learned that. Anyway, that is not how you should design your game. And unfortunately, there were a lot of DS games that tried to do this. At the very least, the one that was the least egregious, I think, was the Wind Waker sequel on DS, where you had to close your map to transfer one stamp from the top to the bottom.
What?
Do you remember what that one was called? The boat one. The Zelda game? Phantom Hourglass. It was Phantom Hourglass.
Oh, okay.
There was a point where you have to transfer a stamp from one map to another, and to do that, you just close your DS.
Because there's one map on the top and one map on the bottom? Oh, and then you open it again. Dude.
It was pretty cute.
That's some Metal Gear stuff, man.
Yeah. So don't do like, do that. Don't do what Bravely Second does.
Oh, it's funny.
Speaking of, another game that does take advantage of the weirder parts of the Nintendo systems has always been Pokemon. It's always been one of the weirder ones, because there is in Sword and Shield, there are a bunch of Pokemon that evolve in really weird ways, and some that come from previous generations that are also really weird. Like Inkay from the previous gens, I think it's a Gen 5 Pokemon. I think Inkay is a Gen 5 Pokemon. Yes, because that was where Contrary started to exist. So the way you evolve it is it has to be past level like 32 or 30 or something, but you have to hold your DS upside down while it levels up, like in the after battle screen, so that it will evolve, because it's an upside down Pokemon.
Oh my goodness.
And in the new generations, there's some real weird ones. There is a Pokemon that is called Milkery or Milcery that only evolves if you spin. There's a spin mechanic in the game that has come from the 6th gen, where you could like do a little like spin in place by spinning your stick, but you just gotta spin for a certain amount of time, and then once you stop it will evolve, because it's a whipped cream Pokemon and you're whipping the milk into cream.
Oh.
There is the alternative Yamask in this version, which you have to have. It has to take 49 points of damage, at least, and not be knocked out, and then you walk under Stonehenge, and it evolves.
That's really, really...
a
lot.
Of course, Inkay makes its return, because the Switch has gyroscopes, so that one is also in that. So anyway, Pokemon can sometimes be really weird in really strange ways, and if you didn't know about the mechanics, it might be a little frustrating, but it's also hilarious sometimes. So it's like, I guess, I don't know. I wasn't as mad about those as I was about Bravely Second, because it just doesn't signal this to you at all. Like, it would be one thing if they were like more explicit about integrating that mechanic into the game, but they're not. So it's just frustrating when you learn that you've been doing it wrong. And you're like, I just want to be done with this, so you got to look it up online. Anyway, anything else? What else have you been up to?
I mean, that's essentially it. It's just that and drawing and the usual stuff.
Cool.
I don't know. I'm excited to see the end of this game now, so that I can actually report to everyone and be like, I played it to the end. I can tell you what happens.
I would like you to tell me what happens at the end, because I'm now curious.
Oh, I forgot that the Magnolia, the new character, she's also an excuse to like have that same mini game from the first game of like rebuilding your town.
Oh yes,
except you're rebuilding her fort on the moon.
I thought that was kind of funny.
Oh, and she also loves to talk about how she's a ball buster because, haha, isn't that funny, that joke? Where the enemies that ruined her fort were called balls, BA''AL.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Busting those balls.
She does not let you forget that she's a ball buster.
No, she does not.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's it. And I guess we ought to segue into what you've been up to, because you already started talking about it.
Yeah, I've been playing Pokemon. I beat Pokemon, I think on Sunday.
You already beat it. Oh my god, dude.
I think most people who bought the game on launch have beat it by now.
I take forever on Pokemon games.
It took me like 2 weeks.
Okay.
Yeah. It came out on like the 9th or something, I think. Anyway. Yeah, I beat Pokemon. I will say, without spoiling anything, because I know that you do probably want to play it at some point, it's super cute, actually. It's really, really good.
Okay. How would you compare it to like Sun and Moon? Because
I would say it's better than Sun and Moon.
Okay, that's what I wanted. That's why I kind of waited on it too, because I was like, I need to know if it's better than Sun and Moon, because I'm kind of struggling with finishing.
It is the best game since Gen 5, I would say.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
It is the best game that has come out since Gen 5. Maybe not counting the remakes of Gen 3, but because I just love Gen 3 a lot. But yeah, ever since they made the switch to 3D modeling, I would say that Sword and Shield is the best just overall. Like, the models look like, I know there's a lot of controversy about them using the same rigs and just changing the textures, but they actually do look pretty good. Like, they don't look amazing, like they're not like, you know, super high quality awesome graphics, but they do look good. Like, they look good enough. I think they're the best that the 3D models have ever looked, and that's really all we can ask at this point. And the animations for the moves actually do look quite good. Like, the Pokemons have basic animations, but the effects for the moves actually look really good in this generation, I would say. I think that all the mechanics that they've introduced are very interesting. I like the raid system because it's an excuse to have boss fights and you can play with your friends, and that's kind of neat, honestly. Like, it's surprisingly more charming than I was expecting a gimmick to be. The game is actually not like the easiest Pokemon game ever.
Oh, interesting.
It's not particularly hard, but it can definitely catch you off guard. Like, the game is a lot smarter, I think, this time around. Like, the Pokemon tend to have stronger move coverages. They tend to, more often than not, like, especially if you don't like grind it all, but like even if you like mess around in the wild area a little bit, like a lot of the times the Pokemon will be of comparable level, as long as you're not just going out and grinding a bunch of levels out. And the characters, I think, are just a fucking grand slam. I think all the characters are so charming in this version, compared to the last couple generations. Like, they're all super memorable. The rival character Hop is super cute, and he actually has like more than a little bit of character development, which is really cool.
Oh.
And more than I really expected. I of course love Marnie because she's adorable, and her like story stuff. There's not a lot of her story stuff, but what there is really nice. Yeah, overall, I think this game is actually really, really good. And I will say that I thought Sun and Moon was good at the time, but like now having played Sword and Shield, I'm gonna say Sun and Moon was better than X and Y, and not as good as Sword and Shield. I think Sword and Shield does a lot of stuff better, and I might just still be salty about when Lusamine fuses with the Ultra Beast and then decides to fight you with a team of Pokemon instead of being a boss battle. Do you remember this, Renu? Do you remember when she was like, yes, now I will fuse with the Pokemon? You're like, whoa, that's really fucked up and weird. And then she was like, now we fight. I'm like, oh my god, am I gonna fight a boss battle? Right. And then she just holds up a Pokeball, and you're like, no!
It's like, wait, what was the point?
You're like, what was any of that for? And then like, you're holding out hope that her last Pokemon is, she's like, I'm gonna fight you myself, and it's not, right. And you're like so upset about it.
It would have been so cool though.
Yeah, I will say that they have peeled back the edge a great deal. It is definitely not nearly as edgy as Sun and Moon was, because Sun and Moon like had some like actual like edge to it. You know, with Lusamine's whole deal about like, I'm trying to replace the void of my dead husband with world domination. And there was like all that like multiverse stuff where like it was suspected that one of the characters came from a version of like you know, a version of Pokemon that was like a previous gen, and they were like it was like basically like a confirmation of like multiverse theory in Pokemon. But they've kind of done away with they've put that all to the side for the moment, at least as far as I can tell, and they're just like, we just want to make a Pokemon game where they do the Pokemon stuff, and it's like cute because it's like a sports tournament, so it really feels like when you watched the Pokemon anime for the first time, and you see Ash like watching a Pokemon battle in like the what is it, like the Elite Four like championship matches, and you're like, that's really cool. Mm-hmm. It feels a lot like that because it's so hyped up as a sporting event. And all of the gym leaders have like great personalities, and they like, and especially the early ones, they come up more often than any other gym leaders really do. Like, because like sometimes gym leaders are just like nothing after you beat them. Right. But in Sword and Shield, they actually do pay a little bit of attention to the fact that like, well, they're still part of the like gym challenge, and they'll like come and talk to you and stuff. So it's that I think that's really cool. I think it's cool that they put a lot of work into making sure that the characters outside of you, the main character, have relationships with each other and they maintain them.
Oh, that's nice.
I will say this about Sword and Shield, as much as I love it, and as much as it has charmed me, you can definitely feel where their constraints were. Like the last, I would say, fourth of the story is like so rushed and so fast, because they were probably really crunched for time.
Oh.
You can tell, like, they have like cutscenes and stuff, but like the writing just isn't as fleshed out as it could be, and you could tell that like they wanted to do more with this, they just didn't really have the time to do it, which is like a real shame because and you know, like, Pokemon games have kind of always been this way, where like they like set up this grand story thing that happens, and then like it just kind of resolves, and you're like, well, okay, that's cool. I would say Sun and Moon had one of the more invested, like, kind of in-depth ones, but like really the writing has never been the strong point of mainline Pokemon games, like,
Right.
so, you know, there's only so much to really expect. I will say that the actually 4th gen story was kind of cool, but putting that aside, yeah, I would say that I really legitimately think that it's the best Pokemon game that we've had in a little bit. I have thoughts about the Dex cut because I actually really don't mind it, but I do know a lot of people that do, and really at this point the next Pokemon game should just be and I know they're not going to do this for various reasons, but the next Pokemon game should just not have any previous generation Pokemon. They really just shouldn't.
That's what I've been thinking about too, and I think other people have also had the same sentiment of like, don't make a big deal about just like choosing certain Pokemon to keep and others to keep out. Just have all new Pokemon, and then that way people who are gonna gripe about not having old Pokemon, none of the old Pokemon are gonna be in there, so they don't. Right,
exactly. Honestly, at this point, I play the game in a way where I only use new Pokemon in my playthrough anyway, so it doesn't actually affect me at all. And
right.
I think that, like, that to me, that's like kind of the fun part about it. Like, I would be fine if no Pokemon returned from the previous games. Now, of course, there are, like, Nintendo, like, Game Freak has kind of shot themselves in the foot, and the Pokemon Company has kind of shot themselves in the foot over this because they've made such a big deal out of certain Pokemon being, like, mascot Pokemon. Like, if you had a Pokemon game without Pikachu, obviously, like, there is something to be said about that.
Right.
Like, that's gonna raise some complaints for sure. Like, kids are gonna be like, where's Pikachu? I want Pikachu in my game. And ultimately, like, I completely understand, and that's probably why they'll never have, like, a game that just doesn't have any old Pokemon, because, like, kids want their favorite Pokemon, and their favorite Pokemon are Pikachu and Eevee and Charizard. That's literally it. Like, as much as that kind of annoys me that, like, Charizard gets the fucking favorite child treatment every generation, like, whatever. Like, fucking kids will have fun playing their Pokemon game. I will let them have fun. As much as I'm just like, as much as I kind of despise every time they're like, oh, we have a new mechanic in this game, guess what? Charizard gets one. And you're like, ugh. Like, X and Y came out, and they're like, we have Mega Evolutions. Charizard has 2. Why? Why?
Because he's the best.
Because he's the best. Yeah. Anyway, I do have one more complaint, which is that the implementation of Gigantamax Pokemon, which is different from Dynamax Pokemon. Dynamax is the big Pokemon. Gigantamax is a unique form when they Dynamax, and they have a unique move associated with that form. I think it was not implemented in a way that is conducive to the, like, the way that it's introduced in a way that is conducive to Pokemon as a game about catching Pokemon. It is not like consistent with Pokemon as a game about raising your favorite Pokemon. And this is the last thing I will talk about in regards to Pokemon, because otherwise we'll be here for another hour, and that thought terrifies me. Sword and Shield has a raid system where, like, you encounter raid Pokemon that are, like, these big Pokemon, and they have, like, health barriers where if you reach a certain amount of health, they conjure up a barrier, and you need to break the barrier before you can whittle down their health some more.
Right.
Which is obviously a way to stop them from just being one-shot by strong Pokemon. Now, Gigantamax is the mechanic that they've introduced alongside Dynamax, and Gigantamax is when they have a unique form when they Dynamax, which is when they get big. And the problem is you can only catch Gigantamax Pokemon from max raid battles. So you cannot get Gigantamax Pokemon unless you catch a Gigantamax Pokemon, even if a Pokemon is the same species as the Pokemon that you catch in the wild outside of the raid battles. So basically, you get to a point where you're like, okay, I've got my favorite Pokemon, my dudes that I've been taking with me on my entire Pokemon journey. My Hatterene, my Sandaconda, I got my Centiskorch, or whatever. And then you're like, well, they'll never reach their full potential. I have to throw them away to catch better Pokemon. Which is so...
Gigantamax version.
Right, exactly. Which is so incredibly upsetting to me because it's like so against the idea of like, well, you're supposed to catch and raise your favorite dudes. Why would I do that if I could just catch a stronger one?
Oh my god, dude. They should have like an item that you could like.
So that's what I was thinking is, and honestly, I think this should be a thing just for balance. Like, I legitimately think that Gigantamaxing should have been correlated to a held item instead of just a weird internal mechanic that is like native to the Pokemon when you catch it. Like, I mean,
or like the Pokemon has to go through some kind of like trial, like whatever,
like
or,
there
something.
should have been some way to be able to Gigantamax Pokemon that you have raised outside of the system. Because obviously, like max raids also are the way to get the best Pokemon. Like, they will have hidden abilities, they will have maximized internal values, they will have well, I mean, obviously they'll have Gigantamax, but like but like raid battles is essentially a way to guarantee good Pokemon. And the people who would want to have done that would have done that anyway, right? So it should be for both balance reasons, because it's kind of broken that you can also give your Gigantamax Pokemon a choice scarf or like a choice band and just be like, I'm gonna one-shot everything on your team. And like, also it just sucks because you're like, I was raising this fucking Pokemon from level like 2. Why do I have to replace it with a different one? I hate
like
it.
Double the work.
It's really annoying to me.
Old Pokemon.
Yeah, it's
and
really
also have the new one. I don't know.
It's really annoying to me because it's basically just like, fuck your old Pokemon. They don't give a shit about them. They're bad. Like, because it's so different from like IVs. Because IVs are like, they only have so much effect on the game because they're all back end stuff. It's all like, you know, internalized mechanic stuff. Like, it will be faster. It will be stronger. It will do more damage. But like, this is such, like, Gigantamax is such a tangible thing. Like, it's the mechanic upon which the game, this one specifically, revolves around.
Right.
Because like all the gym leaders have like, oh, this is my like signature Pokemon, so I'm gonna Gigantamax it. It's got a special Gigantamax form. And you're like, cool, I want one of those. And you think like, well, you can just catch one and like raise it. No, you cannot. So I'm upset about that, and I think that was not implemented in a way that was helpful, because it's kind of just obnoxious too. Like, even if it was an item or something, it would be obnoxious. But like, if it was an item, I would not be as upset about it, because I would be like, okay, I'm gonna put this on my whatever, and it will evolve into whatever. It's not like Mega Evolution where you could just do it. Yeah. Which was great, because you could just pick any Pokemon you wanted to and just be like, Mega Evo.
Padow.
I mean, obviously it had to have a Mega Evolution form, but like, you know. Yeah. Like, you get the idea. Yeah. Now, I will say, like, I just think it should have been an item. Because also the Gigantamax Pokemon are really hard to get as well. Like, people have been cheesing it, but like, the way that you have to do it is you have to find a den that has a Pokemon in it, in the wild area, and interact with it. And the way this works is there's 2 different beams. So there's a 90% chance you get a common beam, which won't be a Gigantamax Pokemon, basically. And the 10% chance it will be a rare beam, which might be a Gigantamax Pokemon. And they both have tables for encounters. And the rare one, and you're keeping track of this, where like there's a 10% chance of getting a rare beam. Okay. Now, within the rare beam, there is a 5% chance of getting the Gigantamax Pokemon. So,
oh man. Okay.
Not only do you have to catch an entirely different Pokemon, you have such an abysmally low chance of getting it, encountering it, and then you have to fight it and beat it, and then you have to catch it, which is not a guaranteed chance.
Wait, so you have to defeat it before you can catch it?
Yeah, you have to bring it to 0 hit points, and then it will give you the option to catch it, and you just throw a ball, and then you throw the ball, and it like goes through the like animation, and if you catch it, you catch it. If you don't, you don't.
Wait, there's still a failure rate on catching it?
So you have to go through like 8 steps of like abstraction to even get to this point.
Bro, so I imagine like after you defeated it, you have the ball to catch it. Do you only have like a limited number of chances to catch it?
Oh, you get 1 chance.
What? No! That's worse than like regular catching, because regular catching, you have that gamble of like, okay, don't kill it, don't kill it, don't kill it, and then you throw as many Pokeballs as you want.
I will say in my experience, I have caught the majority of Pokemon that I've beat. Like, to me, it seems like the chance is probably like 70-30, like around there, depending on some factors. But like, yes.
What if you
it's completely possible that you can go through the effort of like doing this and then getting the rare table and then getting the 5% chance within the rare table, only to fail at catching it once you beat the Pokemon.
You get the 5% out of the 10% if you don't catch it.
Yeah, so, and basically it's just to make sure that Gigantamax Pokemon are rare. Of course, that has gone completely out the window. There is an exploit that allows you to essentially catch it in the middle of the animation for saving and change the date on your Switch, and it will just update. So people have been using this to cheese, and like they're probably in like 2025 at this point. But they've been using it to cheese the system because it just re-rolls every day. So like they can just do that basically.
Right.
Which is, I mean, honestly, it's like too much effort for me to go through. I'll just put in the effort or whatever. If I have to, I don't know. It's a little obnoxious, but like, whatever. I wish it was implemented a little bit better, but it's not. But what can you do? It's Game Freak implementing something involving online connectivity. So, yikes!
Oh my god, dude.
Okay, let's stop talking about Pokemon because this episode is not about Pokemon. As much as I wanted it to be about Pokemon. Maybe one day you'll play it. Okay. Other than that, I've been up to, I don't know, I've been working. I've still not been officially hired, which sucks, but whatever, what can you do? I'm putting together plans for that, don't worry. I stalled NaNoWriMo at like 9,500 words because my life caught up to me and beat the shit out of me. So, I guess I'll just have to continue it into December, I guess.
Okay.
So, you know, there's that, which kind of blows, but what can you do? Life be like that sometimes.
Yeah.
My friend gave me a huge mouse pad, which is kind of nice. And one last thing before we start the episode, I promise.
Mm-hmm.
Cygames has released.
Oh god, here we go.
A new gacha game that is currently a Japan exclusive, which is kind of annoying. It's a gacha pinball game.
Yes.
It's a pinball RPG.
Y'all don't understand, like, when he first brought this up, he's like, oh, they released a pinball RPG, or a pinball game. I was like, oh, okay. And then he actually looked at the trailer for it. He's like, oh no, it's cute. I was like, oh no.
It's cute, and they have the character that I like, Cagliostro or Cagliostro.
So now you have to get it.
Oh, I did, and I rolled. And well, I re-rolled a bunch and I got her, so, you know.
Well, I'm happy for you, man.
Yes. One more thing about Pokemon. Piers is the best.
Okay.
He's my favorite character. Anyway. Let's talk about Parasite!
Which is very not Pokemon.
Very much not Pokemon. Super, super different. So you watched this today? Today?
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Today.
You're
today,
so fresh
on
off
this day
of
of
it.
recording, we're recording on Thanksgiving Day, and I watched it earlier this afternoon.
Holy shit. Okay, Parasite is a 2019 movie directed by Bong Joon-ho, who is known for Snowpiercer, Okja, and The Host, and it is, amongst other things, it's about a poor family living in Seoul that supplants all of the like workers in a rich family's home. So like the driver, the tutor, the other tutor, and the housekeeper. And they basically just milk them for cash. And then shit gets wild. Here's your disclaimer. This is not a spoiler-friendly podcast. It has never been a spoiler-friendly podcast.
Yeah, my recommendation for this movie is that if you're interested in seeing it, then just go watch it now versus
Just
listening
go
to
watch
this
it now.
podcast, because for me, having watched it, I'm really, really, really glad that I knew almost nothing about this movie.
Yes. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Because it's just superseded everything that I would have thought would happen.
Yes. I will put this disclaimer out there. So Bong Joon-ho is a director who is really well known for movies that have very, 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 very graphic depictions of violence. So if that is a thing that you don't want in your movie experience, it's completely okay to skip it.
Yeah.
All of his movies are really like that. I promise the violence does have a point, but they're very upsetting to watch.
Yeah.
Okay, that's the disclaimer out of the way.
That being said, it was a very, very small part of the movie.
The thing about it is, this movie specifically, a very small portion of it is about the violence. But when it happens, whoo boy, does it happen.
Yeah, it happens, and it has an acceptable lead up to it, so that you're not like, well, this is just out of nowhere. I guess someone likes gore or, violence or whatever. But it's not even that, like it makes sense in the story, and then it's over after. Yeah. That's it.
It comes like a crashing tide, and then it's gone.
Yeah.
So, yes, if possible, this is one of the movies that you should go in knowing as little as possible. I knew actually zero about the movie, except for the fact that Bong Joon-ho directed it. So I was prepared for the violence. So I'm preparing you for the violence. But yeah, let's talk about Parasite. Well, actually, specifically, let's talk about Bong Joon-ho first. So Bong Joon-ho, who technically, it would be correct to call him Bong Joon-ho, but Bong Joon-ho. It's the American in me. It really wants to take over here. But Bong Joon-ho is a really famous Korean director who grew up watching Hollywood movies, so a lot of his style is really influenced by Hollywood. And he just makes a bunch of these movies about, well, they're about different things, but most of the time they're about, capitalism is bad and class solidarity is good. The US is bad. The class war is real. So I recently watched The Host for the first time, which is one of the movies he's pretty well known for. It is a movie about a monster that arises from the Han River in South Korea because basically because Americans dumped a bunch of chemicals into the river, and it caused a mutation in a fish that subsequently led to it rampaging and killing people. Now, the movie is actually based on a real event. The monster was not real, but the chemical spill was. So it's based on a real event where the American military base was just dumping chemicals into the river because, who gives a shit, I guess. Mm-hmm. But yeah, a lot of his movies have these very, very strong sense of social commentary. They're very, very pointed. There's a lot of violence. Or I shouldn't say there's a lot of violence. There is violence in those movies, and it's very, very, very pointed, and it's very, very upsetting to watch. But it always, always, always has a point, which is important to note, because there are a lot of South Korean movies that get
They go cray-cray.
yeah, so there's a lot of Korean movies that get exported to the to like Western countries that are incredibly violent, but for no real reason other than the fact that they're being violent. And it's an entire discussion to be had about like machismo and hyper violence and how that arises from film culture, and how it is basically a way to export violence onto non-white bodies. Like, and this is a point that I did not come up with originally. Somebody I follow on Twitter, who is funnily enough a person that I follow for Overwatch League translations, because she translates from Korean to English, but she made a really good point about this, because movies don't really get to be like that in the West anymore. Like, there's very few movies that are like so gung-ho, like violent, like it. We don't really make Rambo movies. And okay, I can't say that because a Rambo movie came out recently. But I'm gonna put a pin in that. I actually really want to come back to that point. But like, you know, those kinds of movies which were so commonplace in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, we don't really have as often anymore, you know? Or at least not in the same way.
Well, yeah, I think the way is a bit different, because we still have franchises that take off really well in that vein of like just a lot of violent stuff. Like, I mean, Taken was kind of violent, and it was just a string of fights, and then
Taken
there was John Wick.
Taken came out like at least a decade ago, though, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, more recently than John Wick, that series.
I mean, yeah, obviously John Wick is an example of one of these.
Yeah. But I feel like definitely the Western movie industry has kind of started moving away from it, unless it's done really well, like in John Wick.
They've moved away from it because they've moved towards cartoon violence. Like they've moved towards comic books, basically. Like really, it almost feels like Marvel is like single-handedly responsible for this. But like in a lot of ways, like you can track the social trend of this exportation of hyper-masculine violence onto non-white bodies. And specifically, and this is my point, if you look at movies like Lucy, the Scarlett Johansson movie, where she just becomes hyper intelligent and kills a bunch of Korean Asian bodies for no reason. By the way, all of the triad in Lucy are Korean for some reason and not Chinese, even though she's in Hong Kong.
What?
I don't get it either. That movie was a huge racist piece of shit. Anyway.
Oh, okay.
It was bad too. It's not a good movie.
I didn't watch it, so I don't know.
Oh, good for you. You're better off. But like, there is a trend of supplanting violence on white bodies, as in, you know, movies like Taken and stuff like that. John Wick, obviously, and exporting it to different countries and non-white bodies. But that's a discussion that's technically adjacent to what we're talking about. The violence has a very like pointedness to it in Bong Joon-ho. It's a very like, the violence is critique, right? It's violence as critique.
Yeah.
Which is very important, because violence for the sake of violence is the rule of beasts.
Like, there's a lot of symbolism in the violence, which was like, I was really surprised by.
Yeah, I would say that the movies that Bong Joon-ho tends to make are very, very, very symbolic, while at the same time being incredibly literal, which is
I know.
Which is part of the reason that I think they work so well, and part of the reason that I think I like the movies so much is because they're so grounded in reality, while at the same time being the exact metaphor that it needs to be. And like, boy, oh, does the Chekhov's gun just kind of he just leaves them lying all over the place.
Yeah.
Anyway, it is. Yeah, I love Bong Joon-ho. I'm gonna probably just binge the rest of his movies. I will say this about Parasite. Parasite is such an incredibly upsetting movie that whenever I think about Parasite, I'm like, wow, Parasite was such a fucking good movie. It's so good. It's so good. It's so good. And if I ever think about rewatching it, I'm like, I'm good.
Yeah, exactly. That's my thought exactly. Like I'm like, okay, I gotta recommend this movie to people that I know. I want to make sure that they watch it. Like, I think it has such like a good message and it has a lot of good commentary and a lot of complex issues. I don't really want to watch it again.
Yes. Yeah. That is exactly how I feel, where I'm just like, would I actually want to watch it again is quite debatable.
Yeah.
Like, that's not to say that the movie is not entertaining.
No, I think it should definitely be experienced.
90
I just don't.
I will say this, like 90% of the movie is super entertaining. It's really fun to watch until it's not.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is, of course, also part of the point.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's get into it. So the movie starts with this like basically like ratty poor family that lives in like a basement, which is like a thing that, you know, happens in Korea. It's like it's a place that has incredibly stratified wealth disparity. And people who live in these like kind of historic locations, like these really old neighborhood locations, tend to live in these like they live in a basement. Like
yeah, well, it's a semi basement, so it's like half underground kind of thing,
right?
And they live in the bottom floor of this apartment home or whatever, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. They live there and they don't really make money. They try to make ends meet by folding pizza boxes. They have to basically keep their windows open during an extermination, like when they like fumigate, because they're like free fumigation, leave the windows open. And it's like, boy, the fucking symbolism starts so early. Like, first scene, you're like, oh, all right.
Yeah,
I guess.
The very first opening scene was them searching for Wi-Fi because the Wi-Fi that they were using got like a new password or something like that, so they couldn't use it anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. And then they receive a gift from one of the son in the family. His friend gives him a gift, which is a scholar's rock or a susuk, which is like a Korean sort of Confucian like object of wealth and prosperity. It's one of those things that's just like, we give you rock because it looked nice.
Yeah.
And because it has, you know, actual symbolic meaning, but you know. Mm-hmm. And God, I saw a really I'm not gonna say bad, but I am gonna say like bland, kind of tired, broad generalization article recently about Parasite and about what it perceives Asian cinema to be like. And it's not good. It's not a good article because it basically makes some really broad generalizations about what the author of the article thinks of the Asian cinema scene and why it features violence so prominently and why there's so many revenge stories. And it was like this whole thing about like Confucian influence and like this navigation of Confucian ideology. It was very bad.
What?
And the lady was certainly trying her best, but she was very white about it.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like someone who knows Asian culture very well, or at least very intimately.
Right. Because if you know
commentary on it.
If you know anything about Asian culture, and I should say specifically, you can't generalize like that. Like, Korean cinema is so specific.
It's really specific. Like when the movie was like starting to play out or whatever, and like, you know, I was just sitting there watching. I was like, man, this is such a Korean movie.
It's an extremely Korean movie. Yeah. Like, the thing about it is, it fits into an already existing current in Korea that has always existed, right. Mind you. That is anti-capitalist, it's anti-imperialist, it's anti-establishment. Like, this current has always existed. Actually, this current also exists, and there's a very like kind of fun, like almost a funny joke about it in The Host, where one of the characters is somebody who protested in the 20th century for a Korean democracy, and now he can't find a job. So it's like this kind of ironic thing. But like it's a very real thing where, like, you know, Korea South and I'd like everybody listening to remember this. South Korea has democracy in spite of American influence, not because of.
But we're America. We spread democracy everywhere, Soupy.
Yeah, Jesus Christ. So it is very important to note that these currents have always existed in Korean culture and Korean academia and Korean cinema. So like, to make a broad generalization about Confucianism is maybe one of the more racist things you could do. Don't do that.
I think it's just a little bit ill-informed. I don't think they intended to be racist.
No. I don't think anyone intends. Well, okay, that's not true. People do intend to be racist.
People do intend to be racist.
Oh God,
sometimes.
what a world!
But, it sounds a little bit ill-informed, a little bit outdated. Because I feel like when you start relating Confucianism in that broad of a generalization, you're taking something out of like a world history book or something like that.
The only time I have ever brought Confucianism to the only times that I've ever brought Confucianism to literary critique or literary contexts are specifically when we were talking about like ancient Chinese poetry.
Yeah, exactly. It's old China, right?
Right. Ancient Chinese poetry, which is, we're literally talking about Confucius. And specifically the context of Confucianism as patriarchy, which does come up a lot in Asian texts, and that is something that you can talk about. But never like this. Let's just say. Anyway, I'm gonna flush that out of my mind because it made me real. I like legit just like I was like I felt it. It felt like okay, and this is funny because I'm obviously like I'm not going to grad school, but like it really felt like reading like a white person, like a white lady's like undergrad paper about like an Asian piece of media where they're just like Confucianism, that's what they do, right?
Yeah.
So that was whatever. Anyway, so the Scholar's Rock is a symbol of like wealth and prosperity. It's, you know, just one of those things that it exists in Asia, in Korea, from Confucianism, but not strictly like, it's not a Confucian story. Stop it. So the rock basically grants them the prosperity of getting into this situation where they're like, you know, this guy is leaving to go abroad, so he's like, can you tutor the child of this family for me? And so he starts tutoring, and then he learns that the other child in that rich family, the Parks, are like needs a tutor. And
so the guy going away, the friend, makes a point to say to our main character, the son, telling him that like, hey, this girl that you're going to be tutoring, I don't trust anyone else with her because I feel like all these frat boys at my university would just try and make a pass at her, and I actually want to ask her out officially whenever she gets into university.
Right.
And so the friend's like, our main character, what's his name?
Kiwoo.
Kiwoo. It's like, yeah, sure, man, I got you. Thanks for your trust.
Yeah.
And yeah, he learns after he gets into the home that there's a much younger son as well, because they have two children, who the mom is saying like, oh, he's like an artistic genius or whatever. And she was thinking about getting him an art tutor. And so then Kiwoo has an older sister who has been trying to get into an art school. And so he's like, he tries to bring her into the household too.
And then they get the dad in by firing the driver. And
then they decide, why not try and get the whole family in?
And then the whole family becomes just like they just supplant all the workers, and suddenly they're making a bunch of money off of these like really naive rich folk.
Yeah.
And so you have your first like, I get it, Parasite thing. Your first moment where you're like, Parasite, yes.
It must be referring to these people because, the son ends up being able to be a replacement tutor despite not being a university student because his sister helps him forge like the documents necessary to kind of give him the appearance of having like attending university. And the friend who had given Kiwoo this job was also like, just fake it, it's fine, just fake it and you'll be able to get this cushy job, whatever, you know. And then it's also kind of implied that the mom, that Kiwoo's parents at some point I guess became both unemployed during that discussion when he's talking to his friend. There's like, they're just having a hard time finding a job right now, kind of thing.
Right, they're all unemployed.
Yeah, but you get the sense that they've been like this for a while. And Kiwoo himself has been having a really hard time getting into university. Like, he failed the exam 4 times. And so he has a sweet moment with his dad where he's saying, like, as he's leaving for this job, that he just printed out his acceptance papers for the university early, that he's still planning on going. But yeah, anyway, they end up getting the dad into the household by getting the current driver of the family fired, by the sister planting her own underwear into the driver's car and kind of making it seem like the driver was a skeezy guy using the car for other means. And then get the mom into the household by replacing the housekeeper by kind of also deceiving the family into thinking that she had tuberculosis. So it's a lot of like trickery and deception into getting this family into this other family's life. And so that's why you kind of think that they're the parasites from the get-go. Despite the fact that you're kind of rooting for them because you don't want them to live in those terrible conditions.
Right.
But then they start doing worse and worse stuff and you're like, oh no.
Well, okay. I think the best part about the great thing about the progression of this movie is that it's such a roller coaster all the way through because you don't really know what to expect, especially if you don't know anything about the movie, which is like the best place to be. Because when I was watching the movie the first time, like he gets to the like house and is just like, doing the tutoring stuff, and he's like doing this whole thing, and I was like, I'm really uncomfortable because I feel like the punchline to this is going to be like he has sex with both of them.
Oh, I had a feeling. I was like, I bet you the girl is going to fall in love with him and he's going to have a moral debate on whether he should get with her, this rich daughter, or be loyal to his friend. But he just moves right in on her.
No, he just goes,
like, no! I was like, this boy is morally bankrupt right now. He just did his friend dirty. But I mean, okay. Also, I don't.
It's because there's so many moments that are like really long, lingering shots on like hand holding or like eye contact.
Yeah,
it's really uncomfortable.
It's uncomfortable, but also it's like, is he seducing her like on purpose or isn't he? And it just kind of happens because she ends up making a move on him, and he's like, okay, well, this is permission. I'm just gonna go in and forget about my friend. But it was also like, it's so interesting because this movie, obviously none of these characters are like morally like completely evil or completely good or whatever. They all have really nice redeeming qualities, and they also have like, oh no, they just did this terrible thing. But their intentions are obviously like they want to be able to take care of their family. They want to take care of each other. And so you kind of, at least for me, as I was watching this movie, I was like, where would I draw the line between doing what's necessary to help my family or like trying to stay true to my ideals and my morals, right?
Well, this is one of the best things about like Bong Joon-ho movies, which is that he does not valorize the poor for being poor. They're not morally righteous because they're poor. Like, they're basically just as much like complicated, messy people as the rest of us. They just have more things to worry about. So like, yes, it's clear that their entire like, MO is to take care of their family first and foremost. They're talking about like, well, like we should just move out of this house that is just kind of shit. Amongst all that other stuff. But at the same time, they obviously do all of these really messed up things, and that's important because it makes them so complicated and so nuanced in a way that is so often not the case in stories like this. Like, the reason it feels like such a grounded story while also feeling like this kind of like, I want to say almost whimsical for the most part, like almost whimsical metaphorical story, you know, this like allegory. It's like, and you're like, oh, like I'm rooting for these people, but they're also kind of dickheads sometimes.
Yeah, like you want good things for them, but at the same time, you're like, they're really doing some terrible things here. Like they're ruining other people's lives for their own sakes.
Right.
But and I love the discussion that they have. Like I think it was probably one of their last moments as a family before stuff really goes down. Is that moment when they're in the living room and they're eating and they're like they've raided the rich family's home while the rich family is out on a camping trip and they're really enjoying themselves and kind of like fantasizing what it would be like if they had owned a home like this kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But the sister, the father, he's saying like, oh, that driver, the old one, like he's young, right? He probably definitely has a job by now, right? And then the rest of the family's like, yeah, you know, like he's young, he's got a good physique, like I'm sure he's fine. But it's obvious that the dad feels guilty about ruining someone else's, you know, life or job prospects for this. And then the sister kind of argues with him, like, why are you thinking about this? Like, we have to just look out for our own. Like, look at the kind of situation we're in. We don't have time to worry about other people. Right. We have to think about ourselves. And that's such a real debate, especially when you're living that impoverished of a life. Is like, you're struggling so hard day to day just to make ends meet. And, like, you have all of these problems. Like, how much can you think about other people outside of your own situation? But at the same time, it's like, how far are you willing to go to ruin someone else's life just so that you can have something a little bit better than the situation you're in now? Or in their case, a lot better, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I would say that, like, in many ways, I like this so much just because it's it refuses to make things, like, really clear cut. But at the same time, it's so clear and direct about what it's saying. Like, the movie has a definite stance that it is taking. But at the same time, you know, you can tell that they're not, like, perfect. It's like, you're not rooting for them. They're not good by virtue of being poor. They're just trying to take care of themselves. Which is, to be fair, the central, like, theme that runs through a lot of Bong Joon-ho's movies, which is that, like, you know, the world is cruel and harsh and you have to rely on your family, but also your family's a fucking mess. Like, there's so much going wrong within your family that how can you possibly take refuge in the only people you know you can trust? Yeah. So, yeah, there is a lot to be said about that. I will say I love the fact that, like, the movie, which is, like, I would say for probably about 70%, like 60 to 70%, it's actually, like, funny. It's, like, really funny.
Yes, I loved how humorous it was, and it kind of reminded me, because of like how dark it gets later, it kind of reminded me of The Wailing. Oh, okay. That Korean horror movie where a lot of scenes in it are super funny and you're like, what's happening? And then it becomes like a legitimately scary movie. Like, I don't want to rewatch that movie also, despite the fact that it was a good movie, because it was scary. Yeah. Well, but it was actually funny. I don't know. that's the thing that's really good about this movie specifically, is that like, it is so masterfully crafted to build tension at the right moments, because even when it's being hysterical, even when it's really funny, you are still so tensed. Yes. Because, like, they go from a funny scene to, like, descending into the basement of the home, and I'm like, immediately just like, oh no. Right, but even in the, like, lighter-hearted part of the movie, like the first half of the movie, it's still really tense sometimes, because you're like, it's like watching a heist movie, because yes, it is. Because they're just trying to do this sort of really kind of not like great idea, but also one that will make them a lot of money very fast. Yeah. And you're like, because there's so many moments where you're like,
Is this gonna work? Is this gonna work? Are they gonna be found out? Like that entire sequence where they're getting the housekeeper fired is just so good. They're just like, shave a peach.
Oh god, that was peach. Definitely a whole like the heist situation kind of.
The first half of Parasite is extremely a heist movie.
Oh man.
Actually, it is a heist movie until about 95% of the way through. I would say. Yeah. 90%. 90%. And then the last 10% is. So. Yeah. Well, because then they have to escape the house. Yeah. Like, as soon as they get home after that, like, that's when the heist part of the movie ends.
Yes, exactly. That's the turning point. Yeah.
Yeah. I will say this about the movie and the direction is that it's very strong. And I noticed this when I watched The Host as well. Like, there's a lot of shots in The Host that are incredibly, like, symbolically charged. Like, the visual storytelling is really, really good. And
yes,
it's really impressive because it's not complicated either. Like, the direction is so clear. It's a lot of like these like moving shots, like up or down, like verticality, that signal movement from like affluence to poverty or poverty to affluence. And at the same time, there's a lot of like parallel shots that just hold 2 points together. Like when the scene of them running down in the rain is happening, they're descending. You know, they're descending from affluence into poverty. And then they have a bunch of those shots where like the dad is like or where like the housekeeper that is like keeping her husband in the basement is like throwing up into the toilet, and then it literally immediately switches to their toilet and like water is like splashing up from it. Like the visual parallelisms in this movie are both incredibly striking, very clear, and very strong.
Yeah, like if I were to rewatch this movie and I don't know, if I were to somehow make myself rewatch this movie, it would be to study the cinematography because it is spot on. It's a gorgeous movie. Every shot, every frame felt very purposeful and really well composed. I was like from the beginning, I was really impressed, and I think they did an amazing job. Yeah.
Well, it's also really important to consider the fact that they made the house for the movie, and a lot of the reason that the house exists is as symbolism. And this is the case with a lot of Bong Joon-ho's works, where the architecture is also pretty important. Like the architecture and the environment are very important to the story being told. The fact that the Kims live in this like really cramped, like almost subterranean but slightly poking out place, where the housekeeper's husband lives in complete darkness underground, and the Parks live in this like amazingly like wide, spacious place that has this like huge glass window pointing out into their yard and beyond, which
and oh my god, the parallel to like their own home, their semi-basement home,
right? Exactly.
With the window pointing out onto the street, like the half window. Oh my god, dude.
Yeah, it's really, really good. Like you have this sliding gradient of how much you can see out into the world, and the window in the Park house is actually really important too, because it was designed with the intent to be like a home theater. So they're like, it's like basically you're able to view out into the world it's a theater, so as entertainment and not as anything else. Whereas, you know, like nobody sees the Kim house, like because there's those drunk people that just come out and pee on the house or whatever, because they don't fucking see the house. And then there's the guy that lives in the basement where nobody even knows he exists, right? So it's like this gradient of like status is so stratified both visually and symbolically that it's like it's so strong, it's so good.
I love even like the parts of when they're just entering their homes or just approaching their homes, because it's like you said, where the parallel shots of them whenever they go down towards their home, they're like crossing this, they're going through this bridge, they're going down these stairs, and then eventually they get down to the lower neighborhoods and they go even further down the street to their home. When they're going to the basement, the bunker, where the guy is, it's in this claustrophobic little hallway that just kind of like winds all the way down. It's all stone stairs all the way down. And then when you're entering the Kim's home, you're on a staircase that goes up into the home. And so it's so interesting.
Yeah. I will also say the movie does a great job of showing the conditions of poverty and what that really means. Because it's one thing to have a family that's like, you know, ostensibly poor. They probably don't have a lot to eat. They don't, you know, they live in kind of a not great like house. They probably have like not good central heating. Like I'm imagining Charlie and the Chocolate Factory right now. Like everybody just there's like 8 people living in the house. Fucking Grandpa Joe or whatever his name is like, I can't move. And then he's like, I got the ticket. And he's like, woohoo! Yahoo! But like what this movie gets really right, and what Bong Joon-ho really understands is that poverty is not a reflection of your like material like possessions. It's a status. Like it is a lingering condition, because even though they're in like the Kims are in the Park family house and they're like dressed like nicely, there's a very pointed thing that they talk about, which is what they smell like. You know, they smell like the same, like kind of musty, like damp smell, which is
basement,
which is to say the smell of poverty. Like it is like, it's a very like powerful way of like talking about how, you know, you can make money and poverty will still not leave you. And and the fact that that the Parks don't understand what it is, but they disdain it anyway. Like that's such a like rich people thing to do, where like, I don't know what it's like to be poor, but I don't like the poor anyway. Right. It's like, and that's kind of where you get the sense of like, cause you don't actually know what any of these fucking people do, that live in the rich house. You know that like the dad does some like international trading or whatever.
I thought he was part of a tech company.
He's like it's like something like globalized, like something global, which is like a really important thing to note. But like they make a ton of money and they have a really nice house that they bought off of an architect that died, and they're blissfully unaware of everything that happens around them, which is the point. Like they, in a sense, are also the parasites.
Yeah.
They
like
get to live really easy lives,
not having to think about the people around them.
And it's like this relationship isn't just one-sided either, where like, you know, it's like, oh, rich people bad, poor people good, right? Because like, you know, like I said, Bong Joon-ho doesn't valorize the poor like that. What he says is like, one of the characters notes they're nice because they're rich. Right? They're allowed to be nice because they have the means to be nice. They obviously don't understand. They're completely naive about everything that happens around them. They're completely oblivious, but they are ostensibly quite decent to the people around them for the most part. So yeah, they are nice because they are rich, but at the same time, they don't really get it.
Yeah.
And then you have the basement.
Golly, the basement.
There's just so much to talk about with the basement.
There was so much, like, that's when the movie, like, I was like, this movie is going so far beyond anything I would have expected. Was the introduction of the basement.
There is a twist like 70% of the way through the movie where it turns out that the old housekeeper's husband has been living in the basement that was built for bomb shelter reasons, basically, because he's avoiding tax collectors. So this is the absolute fucking lowest that you can get in the visual language of the movie, and essentially he just is also a parasite. He fucking lives in the house, and
bro, like the imagery of like when she first like brings them down there, and then like at first I thought that he was like her son or something, because she gave him a baby bottle.
Oh yeah.
Like she gave him a baby bottle and a banana because he had been starving without her working there anymore. And so she was desperate to get into the household so that she could feed this person in the basement, but it turns out that he's her husband and he's in massive debt. And so he can't leave because the loan collectors will come after him, and they're loan sharks, essentially. And so he just lives in this basement because he has nowhere else to go, and he was taken care of by the housekeeper, his wife, and also being able to sneak out during the night and steal food and stuff from the rich people.
That entire sequence where she knocks while they're like having a party is so fucking stressful. Like, because she's just like really ragged and she's just like, please, you have to let me go die. I forgot something. And then like, okay.
I know. No, like, I was legit, oh my God, don't let her in.
I was legit waiting for her to kill somebody, and then it didn't happen, and it got weirder.
It got bizarre. I was like, y'all know that she could compromise everything, and you're letting her in the house. But you could tell that the mom felt guilty.
Yeah, like felt bad.
Because she replaced her. Yeah, because she intentionally threw this woman basically out on the street, and she looks rough. Like, she looks beaten up. And so the mom's like, okay, I'll let you in like real quick or something. And then, holy cannoli.
I legit thought she was gonna go down in the basement and just be like, oh yes, I forgot something in the basement. What was in the basement? A gun.
Right, like a weapon or something, and just goes after them. Oh God.
That didn't happen. It got way wilder. What the fuck?
Yeah.
Okay. So I would like to talk about the basement, because the basement is such an important part of the entire fucking central theme of the movie.
Yeah.
Because it is a remnant of the war. It is a remnant of the Korean War, which is to say the ongoing Korean War, the never-ending Korean War. But it was basically built because of anxieties about the North Korea and like, you know, wartime that would potentially happen, because like that's a thing people have been worrying about for 50 fucking years. So not only that, it was built by an architect, and it was built with that basement, so that's kind of an important detail. Like, the architect clearly had money, because this house is really fucking nice. And the fact that it is built on top of a symbol of wartime is really important, because it means that the people that live there, the people that live in poverty, the house is literally built on top of poverty. Like, it's built on top of people that can't even begin to go outside to fix their conditions. Like, he's fucking stuck in there, because if he goes outside, he'll be killed. And it's important because the Parks have like just no idea what their house is built on. They have no idea who their house is built on. They have no idea about any of this stuff, because they just work in like the dad just works in like global tech. He's like a part of the global market. He has a fucking nuclear family with 3 dogs. Like, it is the symbol of what a like globalized world looks like, a neoliberal globalized world, where like, yes, this man makes a lot of money and he provides for his family, and they're having a good time. But also, it's literally built on top of a wartime bunker that has a person living in it who has been living in it for the past couple years. So, you know, that's like not super subtle, really. Like, that's pretty clear cut about what the movie is trying to tell you about wealth. Like, wealth is built on top of wartime, and it's built on top of poverty.
Yeah.
So,
yep.
That's very important. I love the scene when the fucking families start to fight.
Bro.
Because it's so wild. And also it's like this very pointed like statement about how as long as the threat of rich people exists, poor people will turn against each other because they have to survive, right? Like, they scramble over this phone, and whoever has it, because, you know, they said, oh yeah, because the son says like, oh, dad, right? And that's incriminating evidence, right? And so whoever has this holds the power to rat them out to the other family, to the Park family. And they're just shitheads to each other about it. They're completely they're fighting over it. They're squabbling over it. And then when the housekeeper and her husband get a hold of it, they make them just hold position basically.
Well, he also I think very pointedly says that it's like holding a nuclear warhead.
Yes.
In your hands. Like a button to one.
That is by far, I think, my favorite line in the entire movie, because it's such a sardonic, pointed statement about the relationship between North and South Korea in the current global space, where they're not actually North Koreans, which is what I thought the twist would be. Because God knows the movie had already been twisting me here and there by that point, but the fact that they pretend to be as a joke is telling about certain things, because it is a joke. It is also completely serious in a meta context, because it's yes, the wealth of South Korea is literally built upon the poverty of North Korea. The fact that South and North Korea are constantly at war is not an accident. It is a result of U.S. occupation in South Korea. The threat of North Korea has to exist for the U.S. to justify their presence in South Korea. And here we will return to the important thing that I said at the beginning of this podcast, or at the beginning of this segment about, the actual thing and not the bullshit where we talk about Pokemon for an hour, is democracy in South Korea exists in spite of U.S. influence, not because of, right? There was a very long stretch of time where the U.S. And this is, to be fair, a pointed statement about it's still that today, where the South Korea does not have sovereignty because it doesn't have control over its own military. Its military is controlled by America and the U.S. military. And God knows that that's a whole other thing, which luckily is covered in The Host by Bong Joon-ho. But the fact that it's not only is it okay, wealth is built on top of poverty, it's also specifically the wealth of South Korea is built on top of the wealth of North Korea, and they have to keep squabbling because they can't get it together. Basically, they can't join forces to turn against the rich people because of the overwhelming pressure of those rich people existing. They have so much more power, and they can't even imagine what it would be like to oppose that power. So they just have to threaten each other with it. They just have to threaten each other to get ahead, because there's no other way for them to survive. Just oh my God, it's so good. This movie is so fucking good. It's metaphorical, man. It's really metaphorical.
It's so deep, man.
It's so deep. It's like a monkey, right? No, a person? Okay. Yeah. There's actually a couple of references to North Korea. One of them is when the dad, who's played by Song Kang-ho, who is one of the most famous Korean actors, but he's in everything Bong Joon-ho has ever directed, which is, I think, hilarious. He says specifically when he's driving for the first time, he says, I know everything below the 30th parallel.
Yes.
The 30th parallel being the imaginary line that America drew in the war to be okay, if North Korea crosses this, it's war.
Yeah.
Now they did, because nobody else knew that line existed, because guess what? That's how imperialism works. So it's yeah, you see that everyone in this movie is pretty much justified in what they're doing. They're also just completely awful to each other all the time. Jesus Christ.
It's a lot, man.
The end of the movie is such a natural conclusion to everything else that happens. All of the lead up is such a perfect...
Yep.
It's such a perfect build up to what happens at the end when everything just kind of explodes, where you have people dying, obviously. The what's it called? The guy who lives in the basement, kills the daughter, which is awful.
Yeah.
That scene made me very upset. Then you have the mom kill the guy who lives in the
She
basement.
skewered him.
She skewered him real hard too.
Oh
I was
my
like, holy
God.
crap. And then you have the father kill the dad. Just fucking stab him. And it's such a like perfect like point in that movie that just like peaks all like where the that's like it's the singularity point. That's the word I was looking for. It is the singularity point of the movie where everything just kind of comes together. Like, you know, you have he's sick of hearing about how he smells like poverty, and he has like the dad of the rich family has demonstrated that he does not give a shit about anybody that works for him, because like obviously, like, you know, it is important because his son is having a seizure and he's like, we need to drive to the hospital like right now. But he's also like completely ignoring the fact that the other person, like the daughter of the Kim daughter, is bleeding out onto the floor. She's dying.
Yeah, but he also he doesn't know that she is related to,
right, exactly,
you know, his driver, but he also like it is like the tutor of his son, and I guess everything is going so crazy that he's also in that mindset of like, I gotta get mine, I gotta like get my family out of here, forget everyone else kind of thing. And so it just comes to a head when the Mr. Park, the rich guy, the rich dad, is turning over the body
exactly
of the dead murderer, and he gets assaulted by whatever this guy smells like because he's been in a basement for forever, for 4 years. And that's when the dad finally snaps. Mm-hmm. And I love the moment that later on, the dad actually feels really regretful about having killed him. Like he just like had a moment of like all of this tension just finally welled up and snapped inside of him, but he felt so sorry and he wished that it didn't happen.
Right. It is that moment of like where he has done something that he is reasonably like it is reasonably understandable why he did it. But he knows that what he did was kill another person, and that is just kind of the line that you're not really supposed to cross. And the fact that he goes back into the basement, that he has to become like this, he has to become the new like husband of the housekeeper, where like he has to live in the basement and steal food, and like nobody even knows he exists anymore. Like a new family moves in or whatever. Yeah, right?
Like he takes that guy that he killed. Oh no, not the guy that he killed, but you know.
Yeah, he takes his place.
He takes his place. Yeah, the guy that killed his daughter, you know, and almost killed his son. He has to take his place now.
Right,
and it's crazy.
And I will say, this is kind of a funny thing when I was watching the movie, where I thought the movie would end like 3 different times, and it just kept going.
Me too.
I was like, oh, it's not over. Oh.
Yeah, it kept going. Oh my God. And then when the son is like talking about like his plans for the future and how he's gonna buy the house or whatever, I was like, oh, is this how the movie ends? It has a happy ending.
And then you're like, oh.
And then he showed the last scene.
It's the last scene, like, still thinking about it just gives me chills. Like,
me too. Oh my God, dude.
It's such a, because like there is that moment when you think, okay, he's gonna wander off, and the dad is gonna wander off, and the movie will be over, and then it's not, and then you're thinking, okay, is it this happy scene where like the movie's gonna be over, where like, you know, he's like, you're like, wow, because like there is that like amazing like super gorgeous shot where he walks out of the basement and into the sunlight, and he just like, that scene is so good, and like so like burned into my brain. And then because like he's like, I'll become rich and I'll get this house for you, and you'll be able to walk in the sunlight again, and then it cuts back to him just like writing the letter, and you're like, oh, it hasn't happened. Because you think during that scene, you're like, wow, he actually did it. He somehow managed to like save up the money, and his mom is there, and he somehow managed to afford this ridiculously expensive house, and they got everything moved in, and
his dad and him are hugging, and he was finally able to, like, because during the movie, him and his dad have a moment where Ki-woo apologizes to him, and he's like, just for everything, I'm sorry for everything. And he feels a responsibility to save this family because they're in such a terrible situation. And the dad's like, no, like, this is my responsibility, essentially, because he's the head of the household. And so he took all of the responsibility when he killed Mr. Park and decided to go live in the basement. And so the son wants to save him and save the rest of their family that's left. Mm-hmm. And so you still have this hope that, oh, everything's going to work out for them. Like, all their suffering wasn't for nothing. And then the coldest bringing back down to reality moment is just that scene right after.
The thing about it too is, like, even the, like, visual language of it is incredibly powerful, because you have this moment where, like, the sun is shining into the window and he's, like, walking out into this almost blinding, like, space.
Yeah.
And then you cut back and it's still winter. Yeah.
Oh my god. And the sun also looked just like his friend. Like, the way that his hair was styled, the way that he was dressed, exactly like his friend. I was like, that's super important, because he, during the movie, was also like, I wonder what my friend would do in this situation. Mm-hmm. Because I think, at least in my mind, his friend kind of, like, represents everything that he wants to be. He's a successful university student. He's studying abroad. He's got his life together. And so that's why he's trying to think of, like, what his friend would do in these situations, because he wouldn't mess up this badly.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
And then you just, like, the thing about it is, it's like, it feels so, like, I legit at that realization, and when the movie cut, I was like ready to cry. I was like, oh my god. Yeah. Like, the entire sequence where he's, like, walking out into the, like, lawn, I was, like, about to cry.
Yeah.
Because it is, like, the allegory, like, the metaphor for a son, like a child, trying to lift their parents out of poverty. Yep. And it's like, ow, that hurts me, like, a lot.
Yeah, no, I almost cried during the talk between the son and the dad when they're in the gym, you know, just like when the son was apologizing, I was like,
yeah, like,
I feel this so much.
And then you come to the, like, cold, heavy realization that fantasy isn't real, and you have a lingering sense that it will not happen, that it will not be real. Like, you have this warm dream, and you're brought back to the crushing reality of there's no possible way that you could get there, which is poverty. That's poverty.
Yeah, exactly. It's the inescapability of poverty.
Like, it is the crushing weight of what poverty does to you and what it does to your family. And it's so different from, like, movies that are like, we might be poor, but we have each other. Because it's like, it's so honest about, like, when you're poor, your family, who are the only people that you can trust when you are poor, is a mess because of everything that happens to you when you're poor. Like, it is so important to me that not only is the the characters themselves kind of, like, morally nuanced, it's the fact that the situations they're in are also nuanced, but also very clear about, like, how kind of shitty it is to be poor, and why, like, more importantly, why. Like, it's not just, oh, I don't get to, like, eat or whatever, I don't get to eat good food. It's like, there is a lingering sense of inescapability of my, like, situation, of there's not a future that exists for me except for one that I have to imagine. Like, oh, it hurts, like, right here.
No, it's it permeates literally everything, and it's interesting because I actually was recently reading this. It was basically, like, this comment by someone who was saying, like, the reason that they love stuff like Superman and kung fu movies, and, like, why these, like, superhero genres and also these martial arts genres actually permeate a lot in the Black community, because it was a Black person who was hosting this. He was saying that it's because by basically, having these people that are idealized, and they are constantly kind to other people, and they try to find these idealized solutions to these problems, and they never stop trying to be kind. It's like a way of showing how you can be better than the situation that you're in, that despite how much like poverty that you're in, how bad your neighborhood is, how much crime is rampant there's still a way for you to try and be a good person and try to be kind. And I was like, that's it right there.
Right. I mean, I admit that I have a lot of love for shows and media that are about being kind and about not giving up because of that. Obviously, not every piece of media can or should be like that, because
right, exactly.
It is absolutely vital to me that things like Parasite exist.
Yes,
and really anything that Bong Joon-ho's ever directed, because they're all like, oh god, they're all so fucking sad. Like, because sad things happen in them, and they really, really affect you in ways that are incredibly upsetting, because you feel so hard, because there is a kind of incredibly sincere, like, honest conversation that is occurring when you watch these movies, where it's not like, while it is a symbolic, metaphoric story, it's also so literal and so grounded, and the characters feel so realistic that it like anything that happens to them, you feel, and it feels like the movie is being like true to itself and to you. Like it's speaking the truth to you in a way that, like, I think it's so hard to find, I think, in a lot of like movies where, obviously, like, well, okay, like superhero movies, like I like to watch the cool dudes do the punching because, I feel empowered when I see that like one person can have so much power and still be kind and still affect change. And at the same time, like, there's so much heartfelt sincerity to Bong Joon-ho's movies, because they're like, this situation sucks. Like, these people kind of suck, but like also they're just doing their best. And
everyone is trying to do their best.
Exactly. And nothing that happens in these movies, like, can be changed. Like, every action that happens feels so permanent and has such like direct, powerful consequences that it's such a visceral experience to watch, any of them. The host was really, really good, actually, for multiple reasons. But like, the fact that the dysfunctional family is at the center of it is one of the reasons it's so good. Like, they just squabble all the time, but they still come together to try to do the right thing. And they still, like, oh god, I could talk about that movie for a long time too. But like, I think what's great too is like, it's also like the movies are funny. like even though they're like really serious, really powerful, moving films, they're still like funny, because sometimes even when things are really sad and stressful, something's just kind of funny. Like, there's that entire sequence after the party scene where the son wakes up in the hospital and he just can't stop laughing, and that's like kind of part of it. It's like, it's funny in a way.
Yeah,
but not,
I mean, it's Yeah. I completely agree. Is that, I mean, first of all, as a storytelling element, like juxtaposing tragedy with humor is classic. I mean, it's Shakespearean even, like, it's but also when you're in such a terrible situation, sometimes the only thing you can do to cope is to laugh, and that's why comedy is so important. I mean, any comedian would tell you the same. Is they'll tell you an entire routine based off of this terrible tragic event, but sometimes that's what you need. And that's why I have a really hard time with people, these certain internet people, who will take everything so seriously and be like, you can't laugh at this, you can't laugh at that, but how else will you cope? It's like when like if you're in an ER and you have a surgeon who's cracking jokes while this person on the table is like in a really serious situation. The people in those situations who work to save people's lives, they need this, you know? And I feel like people in general need humor in order to be able to cope with near everything. Obviously it's not something that you have like all the time, you know, not everything can be funny, but I think it's a tried and true method of getting through some really messed up situations.
Yeah, there's a scene where in The Host where they're running, and the dad character like you know falls over, grabs like his daughter's hand and runs, and then he looks and it's the wrong person. He's grabbed the wrong person's daughter. So like it's moments like these where it's something that's kind of actually funny in the middle of something horrifying.
Yeah.
And part of that is like what makes it feel so grounded and so realistic and so like honest, where sometimes something is just funny. As horrible as everything else is, you're like,
yeah. I keep thinking of the scene in The Wailing where they it's like the funeral of one of the victims, and it's very tragic, and however, the funeral goers are like so overly dramatic that it becomes like a really humorous scene, to the point that they actually start fighting each other. and this ridiculous fight breaks out, and the main police investigator, he's the main character, is like the straight man to like everyone else's ridiculousness, and he's also like a really cowardly dude, and so his reactions too are priceless when a lot of crazy stuff goes down. But it also, like, when the horror happens, it's all the more scary because not everything is like weighted down or whatever in the same mood, and it never changes. It's like it becomes really light and then it becomes really heavy, and I think that dynamic is so important in these kinds of movies.
That's how you do black comedy. Well, it's not making really edgy jokes that punch down. It's shit like this where you're like, oh, okay, that's horrifying, but
there needs to be a balance, or else you won't feel the impact of like the really harsh moments nearly as well.
Well, I think that's what Bong Joon-ho does really well. Like the thing is, a lot of horror movies have comedic elements in them to basically like release the tension. And it's kind of the opposite in Bong Joon-ho movies, where it's like all of the comedy is to build attention, and you can feel the tangible, like visceral point at which that will explode. And you feel it all the way through. It's like so strong because you're watching and you're like, the whole way through. And something finally happens. Like anytime something really stressful happens, you're like, ah! And then you go, okay, all right, I feel a lot better, actually. That's weird. Like, it's horrifying, but it also is, like, it's like reverse horror movie, where, like, the comedy builds up to this, like, boiling point, and then the stressful thing happens, and suddenly you're like, relieved a little bit that something has finally happened. You're like, oh.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think the pacing, like, the flow of the movie is so strong, because it twists very strongly, but not in ways that are meant to just twist you. They're meant to just like jar you. Like, it's not like, oh, there's no reason that this should happen. Everything is so like crafted to make a point about something. Like, every shift in the narrative has a reason for being there.
Oh yeah, like every time that I felt like this movie is getting so freaking wild, my mind would kind of like, it would kind of like analyze backward and be like, could this have been prevented given the characters and the circumstances? And the answer was consistently no.
No.
Because like you just think about like everything that leads up to it, and you're like, but this character would do this character would do that, and you're like, this just end up happening just by virtue of the situation that they're in and the kind of people that they are. And
yep.
Oh man.
Yeah. It's funny. I saw an interview with Bong Joon-ho, or at least a little excerpt of an interview where he was like, somebody was just like asking about something. I think about the overseas reception of the movie, and he was like, "Yeah, like I made this movie for a Korean audience, and it really resonated with a lot of people. And I think that the reason is just because we all live in the society of capitalism." Which is like very real. It's very real.
No, the symbolism was so on point, like with the sun's relationship with the rock.
Oh my god, yes, he just carries the rock with him.
Yeah, it's like I can't let it go, like it clings to me, like, and then when he actually gets beaten in the head with it by the guy, I was like, bro, this is like so overt.
But then he doesn't even die.
Yeah, no, he lives, and then he lets go of the rock, but then it's like, okay, but like what happens now though? I feel like you're still gonna be stuck in the cycle despite letting go of the rock. Mm-hmm. So I think the whole like him letting go of the rock is like hope that maybe things will change, but you don't know.
Yeah. God, there's so much more to talk about with this movie, but if we do, I will not be able to edit this. So I suppose we shall wrap around. Wrap around to closing out. Unfortunately, this movie is probably the best movie I've ever seen. I think.
Really?
I don't know if it's my favorite, but I do think it's the sharpest movie I've ever watched. I don't watch a ton of movies, to be fair, but like, I legitimately think that this might be one of the most like well-crafted movies to come out this year.
Oh yes, for sure.
Definitely this year, I think.
Yeah.
Speaking of movies, I watched The Lighthouse recently, which was it's by the same director as the guy who did The Witch. It's very weird. Very weird.
Okay.
Not a super pleasant movie to watch. Mm-hmm. But I would say that it's an adventure, and that maybe if you're interested in like kind of weirder movies, you could have a go at it. It's like about two lighthouse keepers in some unspecified time, and it's really weird. The movie is all in black and white. It's 4:3 aspect ratio, which is weird, but you kind of get used to that. And apparently all of the dialogue comes from logs that were written by actual lighthouse keepers.
Oh, interesting.
It's also because it's by the director of The Witch. It's also an atmospheric horror movie, so
sure.
Watch for that, I guess. I thought it was okay. I thought it was good. It does a lot of interesting things. I don't know if I would ever watch it again, to be honest. It wasn't exactly my cup of tea, I don't think. The Witch was good though.
Did you like The Witch?
Yeah, The Witch was good.
Okay.
Yeah. It's definitely weird. But this movie, Parasite, was chef's kiss, delicious.
It was amazing.
So good.
I was
so good.
Really, really stunned.
I didn't know until recently that Bong Joon-ho directed Snowpiercer. I didn't know that. But I did see a video recently where he made John Hurt and Chris Evans, who are in the movie, do this like Korean like good luck ritual before the shoot where they bow to a pig head. And that was they pulled the pig head up on an iPad because they're like, yeah, we didn't want to freak him out too much, so we put the pig head on an iPad.
Okay, I was gonna say like, oh.
But then they're like, okay, now you gotta bow, and you just kind of got a kick out of making them do that because they had no idea what the fuck was happening, which I thought was pretty funny. But yeah, the absolutely, this was probably the best movie that came out this year, in my opinion. And you should definitely watch it if you're not like put off by the like explosive violence that happens at the end of the movie. I would say it's not worse than like any other horror movie that you might see. It might actually be tamer. It's not like the scenes aren't particularly like graphic. They're not like gory, but they're just so upsetting. Because
they are very upset. Emotionally, they're upsetting.
They're emotionally upsetting, but also like kind of visually, like the filter for the lighting and everything is like really like it's a broad daylight like stabbing, which is just
it's in the middle
horrifying.
of a garden party, which is just the wildest thing.
The thing about it is the moments of violence that happen in this movie are so impactful and so powerful because the entire rest of the movie has been sharpening that knife to a point. And when it finally, like, you know, when that powder keg finally explodes, it's like, whoa. So that's what I mean when I say the violence has a point, is that like it's marking that point, the shift where like the tone has shifted into this like thing, and you see this like graphic display of violence. And you know, it's a lot different from, you know, a lot of Korean cinema that is, you know, a lot of it is hyper violent for the sake of being hyper violent, whereas this is violent to make a point about violence, because what the violence that the husband of the housekeeper inflicts upon the daughter and is different from the violence that it's slightly different from the violence that the father of the Kims inflicts upon the father of the Parks, where like he just stabs him, where like that violence, that moment of violence is symbolic. It's symbolic. It's a symbolic returning of the violence that, you know, rich people do to poor people all the time. So it's like the one moment, like the singularity moment where that relationship is reversed. And that's very interesting, and also like really like, whoa, oh, it hits. But yeah, I would say that it is probably the most memorable movie that I've watched, because I'm still thinking about it.
Oh yeah, no, I think I'll be thinking about this movie for years to come, and just like just occasionally think about like, oh man.
Yeah. Just unpacking it in the course of this podcast episode, I was like, oh my god.
Yeah.
But yeah, we really need to wrap up so that we don't go for 8 years.
Yeah.
It's a little bit too late for that already, but whatever, better late than never. Who are you? Where can we find you on the internet? What are you up to?
Who am I? I'm Renu. You can find me on Twitch and Twitter and Tumblr at SwanDrawn. You can find me on Instagram at swan.drawn. I'm gonna be calling my family tomorrow.
Oh yeah?
And you know, making sure they know I love them, because this was a movie about family as well. 3 different families, and they all got hecked up.
True enough.
And yeah, that's basically it. The holidays are coming up. I don't know what I'm going to be doing. I will probably do more art stuff and the usual. I'm playing through the first Disgaea game on Twitch right now, and that's been a fun time. So yeah, come visit if you want to hang out.
Nice.
Yeah, what about you?
You can find me all places at Literal Soup. This week I'm probably gonna play some more Pokemon. I might play a little bit more of this pinball game, etc., etc., etc. That's it. I think that's all I've got going on. I mean, I obviously did stuff with my friends because they're home for Thanksgiving break. We went out for food. We're probably gonna go out on Saturday, etc., etc., etc.
That's fun.
Yeah. See you next time.
See you next time. Wait, do we have to thank Patreon and stuff?
Oh, you're right. Yes. I completely forgot about everything that we do at the end of the podcast. It's been so long. Our opening is by Scotchy Network, and our ending is by Takuma Okada. And thanks to our patron, Frostfall. Thank you so much for supporting the podcast. News about the podcast, actually. I set up the video uploading thing, so at some point I will put those up on the Vimeo thing so that you can watch our trailer watches. Because I know I've been really bad about this. I have not actually uploaded the video of the trailer watch that I promised that I would upload.
Uh-oh.
But, you know, it's complicated. It's complicated. there were many reasons. But yeah, thanks so much for the support. Anybody else who's listening, we love you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to our wonderful commentary about Eat the Rich.
No.
Eat the Rich. See you next time.
No.
Class war now.
No.
また明日ね。